I've told this story maybe 3 times in my life, and every single time, the person listening asks me the same question. Why didn't you trust your gut? I've been sitting with that question for a long time now, and I still don't have a good answer. It happened when I was 31. I was trying to meet people in the way that people meet people now, which mostly means staring at your phone and hoping the algorithm does something useful. I'd been on Hinge for about 8 months, went on a few dates, nothing that went anywhere significant. I wasn't cynical about it, but I wasn't optimistic either. I was just in it the way you stay in something that occasionally produces results. I matched with Claire on a Tuesday evening in March 2022. Her profile was the kind that made me actually stop scrolling, not because it was flashy, but because it felt unperformed. Her photos looked like a real person rather than a carefully managed image. Her prompts were specific and slightly dry, in a way I found genuinely funny. She said she was 29, worked in pharmaceutical sales, and lived in the same city as me. Nothing about it flagged anything. Nothing about it stood out as anything other than a normal profile from a normal person. We talked for 10 days before meeting. She was good at making conversation. She was direct, remembered details I'd mentioned earlier in the week, and circled back to them, asked questions that felt like genuine curiosity rather than the performance of it. By the time we arranged to meet on a Saturday afternoon, I was more interested than I'd been in anyone from the app before. She suggested a wine bar in her neighborhood, said she knew it well, so I agreed. She was already there when I arrived, and the first thing I noticed instantly was that she looked a little different from her photos. Not completely different though. Same dark hair, similar build, right age. But something about the face didn't quite match what I'd been looking at for 10 days. I sat down and told myself what anyone tells themselves in that moment. It's the lighting and camera angle. Everyone looks slightly different in person, I said to myself. So I ordered a drink and let it go. The date was good. She was easy company. Sharp, funny. The conversation moved without effort. We went through a bottle between us, and I was relaxed in the way you get relaxed when an afternoon goes better than expected. It was getting dark by the time we settled the bill, and I was already thinking about a second date. Then she suggested dinner. Said she knew a place close by. Small, good food, and we could walk. I agreed. We walked for maybe 10 minutes. I wasn't paying close attention to where we were going at first. We were mid-conversation, and I was just following her lead. But at some point, I noticed the street starting to change. It got quieter with less residential, the kind of area that's fine during the day and just feels empty at night. I asked her how much further. She said we were nearly there, that she always forgot how far it was on foot. Since I didn't know the neighborhood, I nodded and kept walking, because what else do you do? We turned onto a street that ended in a small car park behind a row of closed commercial units. She stopped, pulled out her phone, and looked at it like she'd made a wrong turn. I looked around. No foot traffic, no open businesses with nobody around. The nearest main road was the one we'd turned off 2 minutes ago. Then a car came in from the far entrance of the park. Dark, older model, moving slowly. It pulled to a stop about 15 meters from us. The engine stayed running and the headlights stayed on. I looked at Claire. She was looking at the car, not with surprise, not with the mild confusion of someone who just noticed a vehicle in a lonely park. She was looking at it the way you look at something you've been expecting. The car door opened, then a man got out. He was big and started walking toward us. Not fast, just steadily and directly at us, like he knew exactly where he was going. As he got closer, I made a conscious decision to turn around, not to run, and I'm not entirely sure how I managed that, but I walked faster than I've ever walked, and I kept my phone in my hand, and I focused on the main road at the end of the street like it was the only thing that existed. When I got there, I turned around. The man had stopped. He was standing next to Claire, Then I saw her say and gesture something to him. He listened and then turned and went back to the car. I flagged the cab, got in, gave my address, and sat in the back and did not feel what had just happened until I was inside my apartment with the door locked behind me. She texted 40 minutes later, said she was sorry about getting lost, that she hoped I got home okay, and that maybe we could try again sometime. I sat with that message for a long time. The normalcy of it, the complete, practiced normalcy of a text sent 40 minutes after a man had gotten out of a car and walked toward me in the dark. I didn't respond. I sat with my back against the door and looked at her profile for a while. Then I took a screenshot of everything, the photos, the bio, the conversation, and sent it to a friend who works in cybersecurity with a short message explaining what had happened. He said he'd look into it. I didn't hear back from him right away. Life moved on the way life does. 3 weeks passed. Then one evening, he called me out of nowhere and said he'd been reading about a pattern of incidents involving dating apps in the city. Men being walked to isolated locations, usually car parks or dead-end streets, usually at night. In some cases, they'd been robbed. In a few cases, it had gone further than that. He said the pattern suggested coordination, that the women involved weren't acting alone. Then he asked if I remembered sending him those screenshots 3 weeks ago. I said I did. He said he'd been sitting on what he found because he wasn't sure how to bring it up. The photos on Claire's profile belonged to a real woman. He'd done a reverse image search and found her. A graphic designer in another city entirely, whose images had been lifted from a professional portfolio website. The real woman had no idea her photos were being used. Claire didn't exist. The profile was constructed. The photos were stolen. The name, the job, the neighborhood, all of it assembled to produce a specific kind of person that a specific kind of man would agree to meet. What I haven't been able to let go of is simpler than any of it, is that I sat down across from her and noticed she didn't look like her photos. I noticed it clearly, and I dismissed it in seconds because I'd spent 10 days looking forward to meeting her, and I wasn't ready to let that go over a feeling I couldn't explain. I wanted the date to go well. I wanted it to be real. I wish I'd trusted my gut. I wish I'd just trusted it. Someone had built a person out of stolen photographs, 10 days of careful conversation, and that person had walked me through a neighborhood I didn't know well, to a location that had been chosen long before I'd ever opened the app. I don't know what was in that car. I don't know what would have happened if I'd stayed another minute. I've thought about it, and I've decided I don't want to know. What I know is enough. Somewhere out there is a woman whose face was used to build a trap. She has no idea. And I nearly walked into it, thinking I was just going to dinner. I want to say up front that I didn't handle the beginning of this perfectly. I ghosted her. I'm not proud of that, and I'm not using it to excuse what came after, but I want to be honest about my part in it because I think that honesty is the only way to tell this accurately. I matched with her on Tinder in the spring of 2019. Her name was Simone, a high school teacher in her late 20s, and she lived about 30 to 40 minutes from me. We texted for maybe 2 weeks, had good conversations. It was an easy back and forth, the kind of exchange that makes you think a first date is going to go well. We made plans for a Thursday evening, drinks at a bar I knew near my apartment. Thursday came, and I received a message from her saying something had come up at work and she needed to cancel. Could we reschedule? She asked. I said, of course, and meant it. But the reschedule never got pinned down, and the conversation slowed. After about 8 days, I'd moved on without formally saying so. I just stopped responding. Like I said, not proud of it. But to me, it felt like the natural end of something that hadn't really started. 3 weeks later, she texted me. Not about rescheduling, just a casual message, like we'd been talking all along. I responded briefly and didn't continue the conversation. She texted again the next day, and the day after that, all of which I didn't respond to. Then she found my Instagram. I had a public account at the time, nothing unusual, just photos of food and occasional trips. She started liking my posts, old posts, going back a year, not all at once, spread out over several days, a few at a time, the way you'd browse someone's profile if you were being deliberate about not appearing to browse it all at once. I noticed this pattern and made my account private. A week later, she found my Twitter, same pattern. Likes on old posts, spread out and measured. I locked that account too. I'd like to tell you, it stopped there. It didn't. She started showing up at places I'd mentioned in our Tinder conversation. I'd told her I got coffee every Saturday morning at a place near my apartment, the kind of casual detail you share when you're getting to know someone, and it seems harmless. One Saturday, I walked in and she was already there, seated facing the door, and when I came in, she smiled like it was a coincidence. I nodded at her, ordered, and left without sitting down. The following Saturday, she was there again. I then decided to stop going to that coffee shop, and I started paying more attention. About 2 months in, I was at a bar with friends on a Friday night, a bar I'd never mentioned to her, in a neighborhood I didn't live in, with people she'd never heard of. I was standing at the bar, waiting to order, when I felt it. That specific physical sensation of being watched. I turned around, and there she was at a table across the room, not looking at me. She was talking to someone else, laughing, with a drink in hand. I decided to leave without finishing my drink. On the way home, she texted me. It said, "You left early. I want you to think about that for a second." I had said nothing to her. I had left without making eye contact, without acknowledging her, without giving any indication I had seen her. And she texted me to tell me I'd left early, which meant she'd been watching me closely enough to notice the exact moment I walked out the door. I didn't respond. I got home, locked the door, and went to bed, telling myself I needed to deal with this properly in the morning. Block everything, file something, and tell someone tomorrow. I'd handle it tomorrow, I told myself. But I never got the chance to handle it first. I woke up at some point in the early hours. No alarm, no sound, just that sudden surfacing out of sleep that leaves you lying in the dark and you are not sure what pulled you out. I reached for my phone out of habit. There was a text from an unknown number sent at 1:47 a.m., about 4 hours after I'd gotten home. It said, "Your bedroom is smaller than I imagined, but cozy. I like the blue lamp." I have a blue lamp on my bedside table. I have had it for over a year. I have never photographed it, never mentioned it, never described it to anyone I'd met on a dating app. It is a completely unremarkable object that exists in my bedroom and nowhere else. The lamp was right there on the bedside table. I looked at it, and I looked at the text, and I immediately understood what had happened. I didn't have to think about it or talk myself into it. I just knew, in the way you know things, that you really don't want to be true. She'd left the bar after I left, followed me home, or already knew where I lived. She had found a way into my apartment and made her way through my room while I slept. She stood there in the dark, long enough to notice a lamp on my bedside table. And then she'd gone home and waited for me to fall into a deep sleep before sending the message. She wanted me to wake up in that room, read the message, look at the lamp, and know. I called the police from my bed. I did not get up. I did not walk through the apartment alone, in the dark. I sat with my back against the headboard, with every light I could reach turned on, and I waited. The officers found no sign of forced entry, but the kitchen window was unlocked. I had forgotten to lock that window, an oversight I will never fully forgive myself for. They found no fingerprints, no evidence of what she'd touched, whether she'd taken anything, or how long she'd been there. Just the text. They tried tracing the number, but it was a burner, which makes it very difficult to trace. I blocked everything the next morning. Every number, every account, every platform. I filed a report. I told my friends. I did everything I should have done weeks earlier. I was out of that apartment within 3 weeks. Broke my lease and paid the penalty and didn't look back. I never heard from her again. I don't know if the report had anything to do with that, or if she just decided to move on. Either way, I've never looked for the answer.